Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured in return. And why beholdest thou the speck that is in thy brother's eye?
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. Still having trouble getting that audio to work right. Okay, we're in Matthew chapter 7. Verse 1. Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, you shall be measured. It shall be measured. I'm sorry. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. Let's just hold on that, because that's a subject right there. And it's so like I said, choosing to interpret something just as woodenly and as literally as possible is satisfying on two ways. One, it's easy. Two, it feels right. It gives you this feeling like I'm being virtuous. I'm just taking the Bible at face value and saying that's what it really means. But actually what you're doing is you're being lazy, and you're not considering what that the author of the Bible is a person who conveys meaning through language, and does not expect the listener to be passive. So, when the Lord says, judge not here, he doesn't just say judge not, he says, judge not that you be not judged. You remember in the last chapter, he said a number of things. Hold on a second. He said, the last thing we were talking about was when he said, take no thought for your life. Take no thought for your life, what you will eat, what you will drink. And he talked about the most basic necessities of life, things that human beings have to think about. You know what I mean? Like they think about them. It comes into their mind. But what he's saying is those are indeed important things. In fact, like I said, the Apostle Paul later says, let us, having food and raiment, be therewith content. Meaning, if we are clothed and we have enough food to eat, we should be content with our lives. Because it could be worse. It could be far worse than not having food and clothing. I mean, than having food and clothing, things can go downhill from there. If you start not having food, not having clothing. Nakedness and hunger are two of the worst conditions. You know what I mean? So it's a lot worse. Anyways, but take no thought for your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, etc. And then he says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Because that is even more important than the most important thing. That's what he's saying. That the kingdom of God is so important that it should outweigh food and clothing. And so what he's doing is using, by way of comparison and hyperbole, he is demonstrating how important the kingdom of God is. It's more important than food and clothing. It's not a command to, hey, if you ever think about food, you're violating his will, and you're a willful sinner for thinking about food. And you could take it that way. I mean, granted, but like I said, just like with this passage, you have to, this is even worse in many ways, because God has called us to execute judgment. And how will we ever have judges in society if there's no judging? And the thought to me throughout my life has been, I don't know how I could be a judge and a Christian. But the thing is, I mean, because you have to decide about people's innocence and guilt based on evidence. You know, because it's always evidence, it's not proof. Evidence isn't proof. It's just the things used to persuade you to belief. Proof, the only real proofs there are is like in strict logic, you can have a proof. I feel like I need to adjust my piece of paper. Oh, well, whatever. As long as it isn't in my eyes. This coffee's still very hot. So, when he says, judge not that you be not judged, what he means is what he says in the next verse. How you judge people, the judgment you use, that's how you're going to be judged. The measure you meet will be measured to you again. It's like the inverse of forgiveness. You know, he said, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And he said, if you don't forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you. And so this is also the same way. If you judge others, you will be judged in the same way. So he's not saying don't judge. What he's saying is when you judge, you must be aware. And people are going to say, but Paul, he does say judge not. It is a comparison of hyperbole. It is meant, and judge not, and often I'll say we got to judge things, don't judge people. And I do agree that we should not judge people. As Paul says, I don't even judge myself. Don't judge nothing before the time. There's a time for judgment, like for God's judgment upon mankind. And we do not do that. But that's not really what he's talking about here. And if it is, then certainly judge not. Don't judge. Don't put yourself in God's place. When we judge other people, you know, saying, here's a judgment you should never do. Say, that person is irredeemable. The sun is in a strange place this morning. That person's irredeemable. That person cannot be saved. To say such things, is completely out of line. But the meaning here is, he's saying, how you judge is the way you're going to be judged. The measure you use on other people is the measure that's going to be used on you. Because in a certain sense, this is almost impossible to execute. You have to make judgments about people. Like if someone, you have to judge whether someone's trustworthy. Like, let's say you've got to work outside the home and you have to put your kids with daycare. You're not going to go to the daycare and look around and check it out and make sure it's a safe place. Are you going to want to know about the people who are running the daycare? You're going to make a judgment about that? Of course you are. If you're going to go buy a piece of property or a house, are you going to judge that? If you're going to go to the grocery store, you look at the vegetables, you're going to make some judgment about that? Of course, you're going to make all kinds of judgment in life. And like I said, the scriptures command, judge not after the outward appearance, but judge righteous judgment. You know who said that? Jesus. So he actually gave us a command to judge righteous judgment. And that's John. Let me just look that up real quick for judge right. Just go judge right. There's only 40 references like that, but the one I want is in John 7 verse 24. I should remember that. That number is so memorable. And he says, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. In John 7:24. So, you know, you have to judge righteous judgment. Jesus said so. So when he says judge not, he's not saying judge nothing. Be completely non-judgmental. Don't commit to any position. Just be a completely neutral force in the world. And that's not what he meant at all. Here's the thing. When you judge righteous judgment, understand that righteous judgment is going to be visited upon you. And that's a good thing. You know what I mean? I always, you know, people have accused me of, they're like, Jesus said judge not. I'm like, no. He said judge not that you be not judged. Meaning, avoid judgments to avoid judgment. Basically, that, you know, he's playing on things, like, remember, you know, be not as the hypocrites are. So you got an old boy, he's going to church, and he's, you know, he's up there making a long prayer, and you're like, oh God, he's doing this for pretense. He's just making a long prayer just to show everyone how pious and holy he is. Well, then you get up and make a prayer too. You're subject to the same judgment. You know, if you, whatever judgment in your conscience you visit on anyone else, or just in the general, whatever, if you do something you think is wrong, if that's your judgment, then that is the judgment you are going to have to face. The measure you measure is the measure that's going to be measured on you. If you have unreasonable judgment, if you know what I mean, like if you are unreasonable in your judgment, if you are cruel in your judgment, you know, if you visit cruel and unrighteous judgments on people, then you will be judged with those same cruel and unrighteous judgment. Be prepared. That's how God sees it. The way people judge each other, the way people judge the world, when they judge it, they're judging themselves. All your judgment, all the actions of your conscience are preparations against you also. Water is... It's kind of a miraculous substance, isn't it? You ever really look at it? Well, it's hard to see it sometimes. See it as it is. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you again. Actually, very straightforward. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, the beam is in thine own eye? It's a very obvious analogy of, like, so you see someone with a speck in their eye, that's the mote speck, a little tiny thing, a little speck of dust, and you've got a beam in your own eye. And here's the thing, Jesus is using hyperbole. See? Take no thought for your life. Take thought for the kingdom of heaven. You know, judge not that you be not judged, but judge righteous judgment. You know, that's in another place, but still, it's because what you measure is going to be measured to you. If you have a beam in your eye, you know, an obvious example of hyperbole, because no one ever has a beam in their eye. But what he's saying is you have equivalently something so obviously wrong with you. You know, and your brother has this tiny little problem. You know, this is what it gets to judgment. It's, you know, you're nitpicking, you're looking at people's little problems when you've got a huge problem that you and everyone else really can see. And what he's saying, you know, I don't let him say what he had to say. Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. When, it's so very tempting to go around and correct everyone's problems. In fact, sometimes it's like this. Little problems are easier to fix, right? Sometimes it's easier just to sweep up all the little things and leave the big problems to later. I do that all the time when I have a big job or something. Sometimes I'll just like hit all the little stuff first and then take on that big task. Some people think they'd rather, take on the big task first. And when it's your own sin, you definitely need to go after the big things first. As far as, and certainly if you're going to start meddling in someone else's affairs. Because he's not saying you should not have concern for your brother's problems. What he's saying is you have to take care of your own problems first. If two people are drowning, there's no, I don't know if it's possible for one to help the other without killing himself. So, get yourself to a piece of wreckage first, get yourself afloat first, and then you can help other people. And I think they even apply this principle to airplanes. Like when you have children on an airplane, when the air masks, the oxygen masks drop down, they say, put your mask on first and then help other people with theirs. Because you quickly, if the cabin becomes depressurized, you lose oxygen, and your brain very quickly starts to function poorly without oxygen. You need oxygen. It's making me want to breathe. So your brain can function. And so if you don't have it, you're helping people, but at the same time you're losing mental function and you're becoming less helpful. Take a second to put yours on first. They're not going to die. Like in the second it'll take you to put your mask on. And so we ought to, take care of our issues before we start meddling in our brothers' lives. And certainly, we can be blinded by things. And he uses the eye as for a reason, because we can have big issues in our lives which prevent us from taking care of other people's little issues. We can't see clearly. I'm thinking of examples like, just big, if you might have big family problems, right? In your personal life, and then you see someone else is like they've got some little issue, but like you're a busybody in their affairs. And this is something that people just do. They just like to be busybodies in other people's affairs. Doesn't mean you can't give advice. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect before you give advice. God knows that no one could teach the Bible. I couldn't teach the Bible because I still have life problems. Are they specks? Are they beams? Well, I guess that's in the eye of the beholder. How much is it affecting your life is certainly something to consider. But in general, in general, you want to try to set things, get your own house in order. That's another thing it says. Get your house in order. And what that means is, it's a general principle that applies to a lot of things. Let me just take it away from the personal and make it the political. There are always people out there who want to fix the world. Sometimes it drives me nuts just watching all, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to give everyone free college, and we've got to give everyone this and that and the other. And, I don't send my sons to college. I would only do that if they wanted to pursue a career that required a college education, such as advanced engineering, or they want to be a doctor, some sort of hard science, STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, that kind of stuff. where you really want to focus on a higher education and something that I couldn't provide. Certainly medical training, I could not train them to be a doctor or a veterinarian or a lot of other professions. Some technological things I could train them, and certainly there's online courses and stuff. So, I mean, I don't think a lot of those are totally necessary unless you want to go to the advanced level, you know. So I'm not a big believer, and I certainly don't believe anyone needs to get a liberal arts education these days because they're absolutely useless. So imagine they're just going to give it to everyone for free, and it's not so much where you're going to get the money. I understand, we could argue all day about that, and they could get the money somehow. They could eventually run out of other people's money, but the point is you'd be taking all this money out of people's and out of the economy, and you'd be sticking into this somewhat questionable education that costs so much more than a high school education. And why do they need it? Because high school education is so poor. Because it's run by the government. Now we're going to turn college. We're going to take all the costs associated with college, which are already huge and overblown and absolutely ridiculous, right? What it costs to send a kid to college. And we're going to just farm that out to the taxpayers. And then we're just going to give everyone a free college education. It would be the most colossal boondoggle waste of money that's ever been done in society anywhere, anytime. It would just be a complete waste. You'd be getting all these, what are a lot of these people who wouldn't otherwise go to college, and in fact many of them who are getting useless degrees in useless studies, gender studies and race studies and all these Nazi sounding things. They are Nazi sounding things. Right? And then why did I even go into all that? What I'm saying is that they're trying to fix some problem they see in society. The world has problems. We need to fix everything. So they go to college, they get an education, then they go out, they try to fix the world. But they haven't set their own houses in order. They've shown no competence in regards to running anything. And they think they're going to go out there and fix the world for everybody? Like I've said often, not often, but I have said when I was doing Titus, how is it that these guys get out of college and then say, oh, you're a pastor. Congratulations. Da-da-da. You go off and you run a church of people. And you stand there and maybe he's got a wife of 3 years and a little child 1 year old. He has not proven himself able to govern his own house. I remember when I was young, and there's really no way, parents do it all the time to their kids very often. I'm sure many people have had this happen. When I was about 20, I sat down with my mother and father, and I made my complaint, okay, about one of them. We won't say which. And, and they said to me, wait till you have children. It's reasonable. Here I am judging them, right? And I have no, on what grounds do I have to say that anything was done wrong? On what grounds do I make my complaint? Oh, I could do better? Talk is cheap. It's easy to just say I could do better. But now here I am a quarter century later. Quarter century has gone by. And I can talk. And what I said then is what I'll say now. It's like when I said, well, when I have children, when they get to be my age, if they judge that I had failed them in some way, I suppose I would have to listen to that and confess I'd done wrong. Because who's in a better position to judge? Now here I am 25 years later. And I can say with confidence, ask my children. And I have said it to that very person. I said, ask them what they think of me. Ask them what they think of their mother. Ask them. Because in a sense, if your kids get to adulthood and they hate you, you kind of screwed up, okay? If they say a lot of nasty things about you, you kind of screwed up. It doesn't mean they're not going to turn out all right as far as, but your relationship it might be in the tank. It's a teenage rebellion. It's all a byproduct of sending them to school. It's so dangerous. And sending them to college is double dangerous. And I do not, I said, unless you got sent into like a nice school of engineering or something that actually requires a college education. And maybe this is bad advice. I don't know. I guess, business is, even a business school, that's a little better, more serious. I don't know, some sort of field that actually is like, oh, I'm going to be an accountant, so I'm going to go study accounting. I get it. What, are you going to college? Oh, yeah, I'm going to go to college. What are you going to study? I don't know. Not a good idea. And they should have some reason to go there. Otherwise, it's just, start working somewhere. Maybe you can work your way up until you figure what you're going to do. Maybe you could be manager of McDonald's or whatever. It's not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Or maybe not. Maybe you're not cut off for anything like that. I don't know. Everyone's got to make... I'm not here to be a ruler and a judge among men and tell people how to run their lives. But I'm just saying, before you start trying to fix the world, you got to set your own house in order. Before you start telling other people how to do their things, you need to get the beam out of your own eye. It's funny because I saw a guy talking about this famously. There was a book came out called 12 Rules for Life with Jordan Peterson was the author. And one of his rules was something about, it was basically like, before you set out to change the world, get your house in perfect order. And it's funny how many people were offended at this. It's just the same thing Jesus said. Is it so offensive? Get the beam out of your eye? Meaning solve your problems first before you start trying to solve everybody else's problems, because you don't know what the probability that you're going to screw it up is very high. And you're playing with somebody's eye. You're playing with somebody's life. You're playing with our world. The world we depend on for, everyone depends on the world we have right now. And it's kind of working. And people say, oh, it's not working good enough. We got to get in there and change everything and fix it. And then you go to their house and you see the filthy environment they live in. They can't even make their bed in the morning. Their house is in absolute, and I never make my bed. That's funny. It doesn't need to be made. I don't understand. I just get up to bed. It's there and open and ready for business the next time. I never understood that one because no one ever sees my room. No. As far as my bedroom, because all I do is sleep in there. I don't spend any other time there. This is my room. It's pretty much where I live. I think I'd sleep here if I could. Oh, that would be horrible. It's nice to get away. But but people believe they can just they haven't set their lives in order. They haven't done anything like raise the family. Because to me, it's not about. He says clean your room, right? And that's kind of a meme among some people. And get the beam out of your eye. Stands in for all kinds of things. It's not just if like let's say you clean your room, then you move on to the rest of the house. Then clean up your car. Get the then you go up to now you go to your job, and maybe you don't like your job. Maybe it's not a very good job, but you work the crap out of it. You work hard. You do the best. You be the best at the job that you hate. You just be the best at it. That's one thing I can never understand, actually, because I always had a very no matter what I was doing, I would say almost competitive about it, but it's not really competitiveness. It's just I had the sense of like I wanted to be the very best at whatever I did. And when I drove a truck for a couple of years, I wanted to be the best driver in our company. I was, whether I was or not is totally arguable, but I wanted to do the best job. I did, and tried to do my best. And that's the thing. Is like you have so many things around you that you could set right and fix and repair. your own relationships, your own house, your own, you have enough responsibilities that if you look around you and you're already doing a bad job, don't try to fix everybody else. Figure out how to do it at your own small scale before you start upscaling it. I said, if a man is in the epistle to Titus, it says, if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he rule the house of God? Is that Titus? Let's find out. Let's try rule. And this is a piece of software I use for searching the Bible. The Bible Collection. I don't know where you found it. I found it like at Menards like 15 years ago in a big bin of software. And I ripped the ISO a while ago. I mean, I took the CD was getting scratched up, so I took the information off of it because it's just so important to me. I just never been able to find a piece of software that I liked this much. It's not great. It looks, if you looked at it, I can't share it right now. I think if I just do this, like, oop, you can kind of see bits of it, can't you? Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Oop. Anyways. So, whatever. But the scripture I was thinking of, there's two scriptures. And actually in Timothy. 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5. Chapter 3, verse 4 and 5. One that ruleth well, this is talking about a bishop, an overseer of the church. Bishop means, literally, it is episkopos. Like we have the Episcopal Church. It means to over, epi, look upon, basically. Scopos, we have scope. It comes from Greek, and it means to look. Okay? It's someone who oversees, watches over. It does refer to bishop and like a shepherd, even an overseer, someone who watches over things, right? What are the qualifications of that? Oh, well, verse 4, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. Your children should listen to you, abide by your rules. You know what was cool is my oldest son actually once sort of asked me about I'm pretty vocal about these things, about my philosophy. But they praise my rules, One of the things, and I always made it important, you got to understand when you rule your house, part of ruling it well is don't have too many rules. And the rules you make, they should make sense and they should be important. I don't make a lot of little piddly rules for people to worry about, and I don't flip out over small things. You basically, but things that are important, you make iron. Like when I'm on the phone, yelling in the background. That very quickly they learn that. I'll say, I'm going to be making a phone call because this is not we have nice roomy rooms in this house, but it's a small house. The room I'm in now is like 15 by 15 or something like that, maybe 18, it's like 15 by 15, 18 by 18, something like that. I haven't measured in a long time. I forget. It looks like about 16 to me. Maybe 17 feet. 17 by 17, maybe. Maybe it is 18, I don't know. Whatever. But and the one next to it is like that, and then the kitchen's like 15 by 20. So they're big rooms, but there's just this room, the next room, the kitchen, and behind me that door goes to the laundry room / bathroom. Not a lot of space. So someone yelling in the next room can interfere with a business call or something, and so it is not done. You know what I mean? But in general, I let them have fun, and I don't, there's no like, put the towel back. Though there is, don't touch dad's towel, But that's mostly for the older kids. What you do is you have few rules over the things you care most about. Over the things that will make you happy as a parent. Also, that's another, everyone likes, believe me, strict happy dad is a lot more likable then lacks unhappy dad. And I'll explain that in a minute. First, a break from our sponsors. This study is brought to you by oraclesofgod.org. No, it's not brought by anything except just whatever. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies with Paul Strangini. For more studies, songs, and more, I've been meaning to switch up the intro song instead of having it always be what you're hearing in previous studies was Revelation 18, the introduction to the Revelation 18 that no one's really ever heard because it hasn't come out yet. But I'm trying to make that album great, and so it takes a lot of work to rethink things and so on and so forth. Anyways, but you heard today it was Matthew 7, judge not that you be. And so that song and every other song I ever have released is available on oraclesofgod.org. And there's writings and there's hundreds of hours of Bible study, etc., etc. And I have another YouTube page. This is all linked in the description below, but most importantly, subscribe, because one of the things I would like is if I get enough subscribers, I can get a custom URL, and I don't like when I direct people to this channel. It's like QX23576. It's not like nice like this one, youtube.com/user Paul Strangini. Yeah, I'd like something simple like that. Send your questions to questions@oraclesofgod.org. If you have a question about this study, you can put it into the chat, which I am not looking at today. I don't have it up. And I'm going to put it up. Though there's rarely any questions there, it's usually at this point that I look for any. Yeah, well, actually I'm not going to do that. I'll check at the end. Sorry. I'm not taking questions today. But anyways, if you send it to that email address, if you have a general question or you'd like to suggest a topical study, you can send it there and I'll take it into consideration and try to see what I can do to slip it in. I'm whatever. Enough under the hood. Let's go back. So, why is Happy Dad, Happy Strict Dad, why is he more likable to the kids than Angry Lax Dad? And I say this all, and this is important, at least for ruling your own house well. I'll give you some clues, because I'm a man who has the reputation of having had ruled his house well, whose children will praise him and things like that. Okay, I don't mean to be all cocky about it, but I'm just saying, I get annoyed because I see all these people and like they're ruling churches and stuff, and they're totally unqualified. They haven't ruled their own house well, keeping their children in subjection. What did the next verse say? For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not very well. That's probably why so many churches are in such bad shape, because they've been ruled by men who have not proven they know how to rule anything. And rule. People don't believe in rule anymore. They're like, let's get the family together and vote. Only on stuff I don't care about, sure. I mean, if I don't care what the result is, I'll let them vote. Hey, where do you guys want, like if we were going to go out to eat, which is like almost never. But if we were, I was like, and I didn't care, I'd be like, okay, where do you want to eat? I'd actually first defer to my wife, because I'd give her the first choice then. And she's like, I don't care. Well, then I'd say to the kids. That's another thing I do, is I do a strict hierarchy in the car seating. The oldest child is the only one who ever gets to sit in front. I mean, the oldest one who happens to be in the car gets to sit in front. And no exceptions, unless that person just doesn't want to sit in front. And I don't allow any usurpations from below. One time I got the feeling that the person wanted to sit in front, but the younger one kind of persuaded them to go in back. And I was like, do you want to sit in front? Would you like to sit in front? It's your turn. And then made the other one sit in back and made them cry. Oh, boo-hoo. You see, I don't... Children cry. It's just something they do. You know, if you are lax... Now, that rule may not seem very meaningful, but but the thing is, it never changed. As all the kids grew up, they could see that rule in effect, and it was consistent. It made their world consistent, just like God makes our world consistent. Imagine if gravity operated differently on random times and days. Like suddenly you could just go floating up. You know what we'd be constantly operating in unexplored territory. You know, I mean, it's scary. It is stressful when you don't know where you are. And if you're at home and you don't know where you are, you don't know who's in charge, it's stressful on children. Having strong rules is great for kids. It makes them feel secure. And here's the bonus. Like, if you have strong rules about how things are going to be and you enforce them consistently, which means they never change, they never alter, they never bend. I mean, the iron rules. That's why you don't make rules of things you think you might not enforce all the time. You know what I mean? You know, like, no TV ever. You know, like, that's way too strict. You know, no movies. You probably won't be able, unless again, the rules can go too far. I think, because it's like then you endanger a backlash. Your children are going to be exposed to the world, and what you need to do is tell them what to think about the things they see, and that it's better to talk about that rather than to just forbid everything. But what I see all the time is I see parents who are they don't consistently enforce their decisions. Like, for example, when a long time ago, I decided I'm never going to buy them candy at the checkout ever. If I want to buy candy, I go to the candy aisle and I buy candy. We get candy every once in a while. If it's on the grocery list, I'll buy it. I want some chocolate bars. And usually it's something they get as part of their birthday. They'll get like some candy, gum. Kids love gum and stuff like that. And, throw your gum away. Don't leave it laying around. That's a good rule. So, the candy thing in the aisle, like I saw Mom, I think I related this story at some point, but whatever, it's a good story. She's like, her daughter's like, oh, can I get this? No. I said no. And the child just started whining. And no. And then the child went away. And she says, can I get these two? And the mom goes, you can get one. I was just like, you've just trained your child to whine and cry. You know what I mean? I hate whining and crying. It's so annoying. My children don't whine. You know why? Because when they whine, I react extremely negatively to it, and it never results in anything. Now, if a mom, when the babies cry, of course babies, I'm not talking about babies, I'm talking about after they hit 4 or so. You know what I mean? It's like 4 or 5 is when you start teaching them about how to behave like a proper human being. Babies are babies. The mom's gonna answer, because when they cry, it's usually they're wet or they're hungry, or you know what I mean. It isn't until later that they start getting around 2 and 3. They start getting, I want and that, and so it's like no, and then you cry, and then we go home, and eventually they just figure, what's the point in crying? It never gets me anything. As far as that, when it comes to things that they don't need. Crying, one of the things I said is you can cry if you're sad or hurt. Like physically, or sad, hurt. Like your dog dies, cry. Your feelings are hurt, cry. You want a candy bar? Don't cry. Yeah, I've never been embarrassed in public with my children. You know that? Not yet. You know, I still have a few to go. But I mean, as far as I take them to the grocery store, no problems. Because he started at home. You know, you get it at home right. You can go out in public, and they're the people like, what little angels, and you know, and they all think it's like something to do with breeding, and there is something genetic, obviously. Children, their personalities, whether they're very agreeable or not, can be something that's inbred. But you know, all kids can be badly trained to be annoying. And what happens is, when parents give in to their kids like this, and they don't stand by their rules, you know, they're lax, as I said, they become resentful, and their children become unpleasant, and they resent their kids, and they take it out on them. There'll be, mom is going to be grumpy, dad is going to be angry all the time and annoyed. I saw a pair of parents at the checkout. It was a self-checkout. They were right next to me, and they were just so to their kids, just, and their kids were just like all over the place doing whatever, and they were so angry and just like mean sounding, right? And I'm not going to be critical of them there, you know, of course not. But I just know in myself, it's like all they are is angry, and their kids are never going to like them. And it was obvious, you don't like your kids. I love my kids, I do. No, you don't. You don't. What it is there's something else you love. You love yourself, or or something that's done out of ignorance. Obviously, people don't necessarily have the right instinct. But you got to look at what's happening. What you're doing is you're teaching the children that your authority doesn't matter, and that they don't have to listen to you. And then you're getting angry because they don't listen to you. It's just like revolving door, and it gets worse and worse. And by the time they get to teenagers, they're going to be the most difficult people. And I remember early on, I was like, I don't want to be living with people I don't like. I don't care if I love them. I just don't like this, that. No. I want to like everything about them. Virtually. I mean, there's always things about people. You know, he's like, I wish they were, you know, you might say, I wish they were more this, that, the other. Take more responsibility on their own. Whatever. But it's different with I have a lot of kids, so I've seen a lot of examples. They're all different. And I see a lot of it's due to their personality. Some have to learn things. You know, well, they all have to learn things, but they're different things they have to learn. And I've sort of made this, the second half has gotten 20 minutes of this, but it is one way in which people have an opportunity. If you have a family, you have an opportunity to rule your house well. And you have an opportunity to demonstrate a sort of worthiness of respect. You know, if your family members don't respect you, why should anyone else? You know, and that is your own eye, you know, your own house. If a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? If you can't get a beam out of your own eye, a beam, it's easy. If you can't do that, then why would you think you should start fiddling around with other people's problems? I got 10 more minutes. We can do some more verses. Yes. Give not that which is holy to the dogs, neither cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. And I'm still thinking about that last question that I was thinking about. Like, I don't know if I made everything absolutely clear. Why strict, happy dad is more liked. And the kids will like you too. For being, one, they'll just feel more secure. They'll feel like their world is consistent. And you're not going to be all angry at them all the time. I think I made it clear by just explaining. You're going to be angry at that. And the kids are going to say, like, Dad's angry all the time. And I don't respect Dad. But on the other side, it's like, well, I got to do what Dad says. You know, it's hard. It's best to do it early, start early. But if you got to do it later, it's going to be a little more difficult. But it can be, I believe it can be done. I can't say for sure it can be done because I started off doing it right from the beginning. So I don't know. You know, like I said, I want to. I at one point I started doing like, I recorded 1 hour of what I was gonna do, like I was gonna call it the fathering podcast. And I don't know. I don't know if that belongs. Maybe I should do that on my personal studies page. Not personal, my other YouTube. I don't even know how to divide this all up. It's just, I think I'm gonna go in here because this is my streaming channel. But I could talk about that literally for hour after hour, you know, and everything I say would be good for people to hear. And like I said, it's not just, like I said, it's in all. Well, I don't like to be falsely humble. You know what I mean? Like, as far as like to just be like humble for humble's sake, just put on this air of humility. I don't consider it pride or anything. It's just, I went out and I accomplished it because, not because, it's just what is. And I'm not afraid to say so, you know. It's like, well, you know, a lot of times people say, well, what is the credentials of anyone? I have credentials. I've ruled my own house well. Then you can say that's self-judgment, but it's like, no, it's not entirely. I mean, you're hearing it from me, but others will hear it from my children. Ask my wife. You know, ask the people around me. Give not that which is holy to the dogs. I was like, give not that which is holy to the dogs. Neither cast your pearls before swine. It's a lovely concept, you know. I mean, it's the opposite of lovely. Like giving that thing that is sacred, throwing it to the vile and to the unclean. You don't, you know, that which is holy is that which is, you know, in the reference of Judaism, it was the stuff for the temple, the food, the sacrifices, the, you know, the holy things that are set apart. Don't give it to the dogs. Why? Because the dogs don't care if it's holy. They'll scarf it down just like it was the same way they would their own feces. So if they're that kind of dog, which very often, you know, if there's something, you know, they scarf. That's making me nauseous to think about. But the way they would, just a dirty piece of meat, you know, a piece of rotting scrap. Pigs too. What's pearls to pigs? They don't care for them. And so also, like when you know, it is somewhat like, you know, it is a kind of don't waste your time. I've had people use this on me, and it's never nice to say this to someone. And I was like, well, I guess I just won't cast my pearls before a swine. You know, again, go back to chapter 5. Whoever's angry with his brother, you know, because if you're saying, if you're talking to someone and you're saying, I shake the dust off my feet at you, or you say, I should have known better than to cast my pearls before swine. If you say that to someone, what you're manifesting is your own anger and frustration, and it may have more to do with your own lack of your own abilities or lack thereof. You know, though. Because the thing is, no, even, here's how it works. Even the most persuasive person, and I can be very persuasive. Give me a chance, you know what I mean? On a particular topic to try to change your mind if I feel strongly about it. Even if I don't, if I understand the position very well, I can make a good argument for something I don't even agree with. I mean, that's a skilled debater can do that. They can make the other side's point, and that is, you know, it's all about this. It's about the skill of persuasion, and it's very useful. But when it comes to the gospel, there's in human nature also. When it comes to human nature, sometimes no amount of persuasion is going to change someone's mind, because by nature they are resisting it. Like, and I my mind is on the Apostle Paul. Judge not that you be not judged, okay? Don't judge anything before the time. So when you're dealing with someone, on one hand, you got to remember, recognize the situation, but it is not this permanent thought you put in. It's like, well, they're just beyond redemption. Just recognizing the situation that you're dealing with someone who has you're dealing with someone who has a swine's attitude towards your pearls. You know what I mean? Like, you don't take much, like, you try to explain something to someone and they just start mocking and ridiculing the sacred, the precious. I take my precious time with people and they become negative in a very personal way. Sometimes I even explore that a bit just to see how to, because it's possible to cut through. Human beings aren't pigs, but they can be in a given situation. The Apostle Paul, you might, at one point, he had no ear for the gospel at all. In fact, he would have heard some notion of it. He would have heard something about Jesus, but all he was interested was in pursuing the Christians and having them cast into prison and etc. Right? He was persecuting the church, and any amount of preaching to him would have been a waste because he wouldn't hear. But God has the power to open men's eyes. Okay, so while one ought not give that which is holy to the dogs, or cast their pearls before swine, it's a judgment call. Because with human beings, you may not, you do not knowingly waste your time. And pearls is, I don't know. Jesus said, preach the gospel to every creature. So I don't think that's what he means. You know what I mean? But but it goes back, let's put it in context with what we've been talking about, okay? Because I'm like thinking about the gospel. What it is my problem often is, I start thinking of the extreme cases immediately where it tests what the Lord is saying. Because I've tested the words of the Lord and tried to understand them. And not just breeze by and like, oh, just take it literally and never judge. Don't think about eating. It's sinful, et cetera, et cetera. Things that nobody ever is able to do. But there's something that you are able to do that you should do that's underneath the surface. And so, don't cast your pearls before swine. Think of that in context with what we were talking about before. Take out the beam from your eye that you can remove the speck from your brother's eye. And and let's say I know a lot about raising a family. When I was at the store, right, and I said I saw this couple and they were having a hard time with their kids. The kids were all over the place and they were just angry or mad. It was like, they were very angry and mad the whole time. And the mother just had this look on her face. Her face was like a knot of rage. And the father's face was a mask of hatred. I love poetry. It was just like, and the mother was like, or I don't know what. I can't pooch my mouth and face the way she was. She was just like, something. It's like, I forgot the kid's name. It was like, Thomas? It just probably wasn't something like Thomas. It's going to be some weird modern name like Austin? No, that's even out of fashion. What do they call him now? I don't know, whatever. There was like 3 of them, and they were just, right? If I were to go to them and say, like, excuse me, I know a lot about raising parents. I know a lot about raising kids. Let me give you some advice. What you should do is this. It's your little pearls of wisdom. This is not referred to the gospel. You preach the gospel to dogs, okay? I always preach to people who I don't know if I don't think they're going to receive it. It's so easy to just beg off and say like, "Oh, I don't have to preach to them because they wouldn't hear it anyways." You know what I mean? They're not going to hear me, so I'm not going to bother. They're not worth my time. It's so easy to write someone off like that instead of taking the time to explain to them. Like, no, I don't agree with you. Oh really? Why not? It's like, well, da 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 da. And then you're having a discussion, debate. There's no swines in debates. There's no swines in a discussion. I gotta move my piece of paper. There's no reason to judge someone like that. It's always inappropriate, okay? This has to do with your little pearls of wisdom, your little sacred sayings, all right? And it could have to do with like deep biblical truths. You know, like you see someone, you know, it's like someone's having a drunken revel, you know, and you go up to it and say, you know, wine is a mocker, and blah, 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 blah. It may be true. You know what I mean? You may have a sacred truth. It's not preaching the gospel. It's not convincing someone of the Lord Jesus. That is something that's open in public. We do that no matter what. Because else, how can you ever be persecuted for righteousness' sake? How can you ever be persecuted for the gospel's sake if you don't preach the gospel? You know what I mean? If you're always just staying safe, you know, keeping that which is holy to yourself. This is more like I said, like you have people who, like I said, they're not going to receive my little bits of wisdom. They're angry, they're embarrassed, they're in a bad situation. It's not conducive. If someone comes up to me and says, like, Paul, I'd like some advice about this, then I'm going to give you the advice. You know, but if someone comes up to me, but someone doesn't come up to me, but I go up to them, I may have set my own house in order, right? But some people are not going to appreciate me intruding into their lives. Just like the speck that is in your brother's eye. Well, if it's your brother got a speck, sure. He can say, oh, my brother, you say I have a speck in my eye? How so? Well, let me get it for you. See, look, I got it right here. There you go. All okay. Your brother may be willing to listen to you and willing to believe and trust you to stick your finger in his eye. But a stranger might take a totally different view of that. You know, you start intruding yourself into someone's life, a stranger, a foreigner, you know, dogs, you know, Jesus uses that particular metaphor, which is what it is, you know, saying foreigners are dogs. That's a metaphor. And that is used of foreigners, non-Jews. Like when he says to the Samaritan woman, he said, it is not meet to give it is not suitable, or what does he say? It's not fit, whatever, to give the children's meat to the dogs. And he was talking about her. She was not a Jew. No, that wasn't the Samaritan woman. No. That was a Gentile. No, she was from Tyre and Sidon. Maybe she was a Samaritan. But she was a Gentile from the regions of Tyre and Sidon. A woman of Tyre and Sidon. And she wanted her child healed. And she said, I don't want... She was the one, I believe, who said... who just would not let him go. And she said, even the dogs eat of the scraps of the table. Okay. I'm trying to track that verse down mentally, and I'm totally unnecessary. Most people remember that. I assume, actually, I shouldn't say... I would assume everyone remembers that. Everyone remembers that. Let's forget that a lot of people haven't been studying the Bible for 20 years. And that, and I try to take it down to a level that's easy to understand. I have no way of gauging this. You know, no one's ever... I never get exactly the feedback. I'm sure there's a lot of people that try to study with it, and maybe it's too advanced, or other people who think it's just too dumbed down. I don't know. I have no idea. neither cast your pearls before swine. So, like I said, I think I got a little better example there with the people at the cash register. And it's more like you're moralizing. Relate it back to the beam and the speck. Even if you have set your house in order, even if you have sacred knowledge and truth to share with the world and with other people, obviously that's what I mean by, here, cornfield, here's my wisdom. The world doesn't receive it, but I mean people in the world. Even if you have set your house in order, if you don't have a ready audience, if the audience is not willing to hear, it's not wise to insert yourself, and because they will resent you. That's what happens. Everyone resents a busybody. Whether it's religiously going around saying you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, just meddling in everyone else's affairs. Oh, you got something in your eye all the time. Your neighbor, you're a stranger. Don't go up to a stranger and go like, "Oh, you got something in your eye. Let me help you." They're not going to trust you. You know what I mean? Why should they? You're a stranger to them. Holy things are alien to dogs. Pearls are alien to pigs. It's not part of their world. A pearl doesn't mean anything. And what will happen is, like, you start giving your advice when it's not wanted, they will trample it. They will say, like, that's a bunch of crap, and then they'll turn on you. To rend means to rip. That's what swine do. They have tusks. They rip you up. They can do incredible damage to your legs. They get their horns in there because that's down where they are, and they do rip you up. So, where you bestow your wisdom should be on those who are not just worthy, but who want it. I mean, it is better, far better, to, like Jesus, I forget. Sometimes the Bible says, as the Bible says, be always ready to give an answer to anyone of the reason of the hope that lieth in you. It's like sometimes I don't know. I was recently at a wedding and a family member came up and they were like, "How do you do it? Like, what have you done?" I think it's fun, because people are remark at the behavior of my kids, especially the older ones. They're unusual because of the way they've been raised. Especially they're all friends with each other. They're all very sociable. They just are well socialized, well behaved, polite, gregarious. They're not shy. They are, they're competent to, in social situations, all the way down the line. And so, they're just well behaved and whatever, and they ask me questions, right? And I think, like, you said you were leaving in 5. It's the end of the night, and you're asking me something that I need like 4 hours to talk to you about. What did I do? It's like, it's cornflakes, actually. It's just, I feed them cornflakes and then magic. There's no magical potion solution. It's like a book could be written. Someone's like, you should write a book. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. There's a lot of things I should do. A lot of things I'd like to do. Most of the time, I'm just trying to survive. I said the hardest thing about having 8 kids is how expensive it is. The rest of it's easy. Anyways, that's 10 minutes over. As per usual, let's just call it the hour and 10-minute Bible study. Because I'm always a little late. In life, so many times, I'm a little bit late. 10 minutes. 10 minutes over. Because I never get tired of talking to these things. So if you'd like to hear me talk about it more, what I suggest you do is subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies with Paul Strangini. That's this channel. Just click on the subscription button in the lower left hand, just beneath the lower left hand corner of the screen. And then, or if it's on some other thing, whatever, if I upload this somewhere else, you can do it there, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And the questions address questions@oraclesofgod.org. And you can have your question answered or your topic covered. I've got one waiting right now, so someday that may go away. We'll pick up next time with verse 7. And until then, thank you for joining me in this study. I look forward to studying with you again very soon, tomorrow. Let's see what I'm going to pick. I'm going to try to get the music thing right here. What am I going to pick for music? I thought I had an idea. Oh yeah, we'll do the end of chapter 7. Where is it? Here we go. Ready? So until next time.
Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast in the fire. Not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven.